Since the mid-20th century, the Chelsea Hotel in New York City has been a symbol of the bohemian lifestyle. An official landmark since 1966, the Chelsea is famous for housing a veritable who's who of the art world. It's perhaps equally notorious for being a den of scandalous, even criminal behaviour. But things have changed. The Chelsea has been under new management for nearly a decade and is currently shuttered to new residents as it undergoes major renovations. And though improvements may be long overdue, some long-time residents are mourning that yet another bohemian New York institution is being commodified and lost. But to at least one tenant, the Chelsea's cultural moment ended in 2007, when longtime manager Stanley Bard was taken off the hotel's board of directors.
I'm Gerald Busby. I'm a composer, and I've lived at the Chelsea Hotel since 1977. The people here who complain about, oh, it's not like it used to be. I said, of course it isn't. You know, it was like, Stanley was like the director of like Paul Taylor of a modern dance company or a restaurateur. They have a period in which they exist and thrive on the spirit of the creator. And then when that's over, it's over.
Indeed, Bard's reign was only one of many chapters in the rich history of this New York City landmark. When the Chelsea first opened its doors in 1885, it was not only the largest building in the city, but also one of the nation's first housing co-ops. It wasn't until 1905 that the Chelsea actually became a hotel, at first courting wealthy guests, but eventually turning into a de facto refuge for the city's artists and bohemians, as Manhattan's West End became less of a tourist destination. In 1939, the hotel was sold to a trio of investors. When the last of these, David Bard, died in 1970, his son Stanley took over as hotel manager. With his eccentric personality and a keen interest in the arts, Stanley Bard transformed the Chelsea into the cultural behemoth it's become known as today.
He was wonderful. He was like a crazy uncle. Somebody in your family who was really nuts, but he was charming and wonderful, and he made things happen. He started creating the atmosphere of where artists could live cheaply and thrive. And then he had the idea of we've got to have people who will pay the rent on time, like rich dilettantes and so forth and so on. So he created this, the entire thing.
While the Chelsea had long been an unofficial home for artists, novelists and playwrights, iconic musicians, visionary artists and beat poets, Stanley Bard cultivated a wild, no-rules atmosphere that appealed to the creative set more explicitly than ever. Ed Hamilton, resident and author of the 2007 book Legends of the Chelsea Hotel, says the environment was never dull.
The whole place just had like a really electric current. There was this weird, interchange of all people in the arts. That's the only people that Stanley would let in. The rooms were next to us, could be filled with junkies one night, or the next night it might be a blues musician, or it might be a punk rocker.
I used to think of the Chelsea Hotel as a combination of an artist colony and a college dormitory. It was kind of anything goes crazy. It was a place where you could do anything you wanted to do, whether it was artistic or it was self-destructive or it was making a souffle or whatever it was. You were free to let her rip, let her go.
Though many wanted in on Stanley's artistic colony, not just anyone was accepted. But despite a strict vetting process, once Stanley actually let someone in, he was a remarkably loyal landlord.
After my partner, Sam Byers, died of AIDS, I had an apartment down the hall, 4.5 rooms we had together for 16 years. And then when all the craziness started, Stanley moved me here and said, if you'll behave yourself and you pay your rent on time, you can stay here the rest of your life. And my rent has not gone up in 35 years.
His fiduciary duty is to increase profits, right? And he's not. In fact, he's renting it out to people who can't pay the higher rents.
After the first year, no leases. It was all a matter of being on good terms with him.
Stanley wanted to create something lasting, and he wanted to give artists some place to live.
But as well as giving society's outcasts places to stay, The Chelsea also became where many would go to die.
In the first few years I lived here, every year there was a murder or a major fire where we all had to run out on the fire escape or something. And we just lots of suicides. It was popular with young people who were real druggies to come here and get totally stoned and jump down the stairwell. There's something very alluring and mysterious and kind of sinister about that stairwell.
Still, not everyone was interested in such extremes. Some residents simply wanted to create.
There's many ways to be a bohemian in the Chelsea, and more so than that, like everybody has their own take on it.
Back in those days, I didn't even know who my neighbors were. I knew some were famous and some were, I'd see them I didn't even know their names. But we were very friendly, and how do you do? But that was part of it, that you were isolated and insulated, that you had this cocoon-like existence.
But Stanley Bard would eventually learn that an anything-goes attitude can only go so far in business, when in 2007 he was ousted from the board of the Chelsea. By 2011, a developer had purchased the hotel. Ed Hamilton says the new owners have not shown a great interest in preserving the Chelsea's cultural legacy.
They wanted to take down the Hotel Chelsea sign. They wanted to just trash that. They weren't allowed to because it's at least the outside of it is landmarked. Here's the room where Thomas Wolfe lived. It's basically unchanged since he lived there in 1939. Here's where Arthur Miller lived, basically unchanged since the 60s. They didn't care. I mean, they completely gutted them. They ripped out floorboards, they ripped out walls, ripped out everything.
The refurbished Chelsea Hotel is set to reopen to the public in 2017, and though it may prove to be more sustainable as a high-end boutique hotel, wild ghosts of the building's past will continue to be remembered for generations to come.